It's the most powerful show on television. High drama with intense energy. A show dedicated to a few brave souls who risk their lives for the sake of their craft. Its in-depth reporting goes to the core and unlocks the mysteries behind today's raciest sport. Motorsports. Catch it when you can.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Post Tech. Today we move on to episode number 12, coming off a very controversial weekend of racing out at the Pocono Raceway. NASCAR got especially a lot of heat from not only just members of the media, but also, the fans abroad on social media and that sort of things, the drivers as well, crew members. Everyone was rather frustrated, including the track owners. Pocono Raceway was not very satisfied with obviously what transpired because, first of all, it's a liability as your speedway, but also puts their track in jeopardy. So the owners of the racetrack are absolutely going to have to do something. There's no more putting it off at this point. We all kind of thought maybe Matt Kenseth's incident was just another fluke on a big, long list of flukes. And I mentioned a lot of the bad wrecks that Pocono's seen in its track history, but there was one really big wreck that I believe I forgot in the broadcast. Elliott Sadler, 2010. One of the worst impacts we've ever seen. Thank goodness for the COT and all the improvements made in the safety features of that race car. But that's just one of very many accidents that have happened in the history of Pocono that kind of point to it being unsafe. First of all, let's start off with the Camping World Truck Series race. I've said for years that the worst type of racetrack is a track that can produce both boring and dangerous racing at the same time. And it looks like Pocono, going off of the races ran there over last weekend, is the perfect representative of a racetrack that, at least in stock car racing, produces boring but dangerous racing at the same time. The Camping World Truck Series race only saw 2 leaders. Stuart Friesen for the first 14 laps, and then Matt Crafton for the final 46. Now, you could, I guess, blame the racing product on just how good the ThorSport number 88 truck was. They brought a great setup that could whoop the entire field, and I give them a lot of credit for doing that. You can't discredit an organization for stinking up the show, essentially, because everyone else should have logically brought a setup as good or better if they want to compete and be successful. So it's not their fault. But beyond just Crafton, and, I give them credit also for using the dirty air to stay out front, too. That was good strategy, because Crafton did not have the fastest truck there at the end. I believe it was Brennan Poole. But the racing suffered because of the dirty air issue, and now that's never going to go away, especially with our trucks. Everybody talks about low downforce, so I'll fix it. With our trucks, the cabs are big enough to where even if they had no spoiler on the rear end, that cab still pushes a lot of air. So until you somehow make it a convertible truck, you're not going to get rid of that problem. But Pocono Raceway is one of those unique racetracks where, with the long straightaways and tight, corners, tight turning radiuses, it makes it where it's really difficult to pass because you can pinch someone down on the bottom, and you have the entire, airport straightaway to get away from them. At a track like, let's say, one that's based off of Milwaukee. That's traditionally a 2-groove racetrack. You can kind of run where they normally would put patches down on the inside. You could also build up a higher lane at Milwaukee as the run would go on. Granted, back then we'd run pretty soft tires there in the Busch Series or ASA. I'm talking about the stock cars, the races that used to happen all the time. But it'd turn into a 2-groove racetrack. You could hold somebody down on the bottom, up on the outside, but the straightaways weren't long enough to where you could really get away from them. The car on your inside could kind of stay there for a couple laps until one of them would get the better of each other and someone would make a move. But you could make moves on both the inside and the outside at Milwaukee pretty easily. And that track isn't like how, say, at New Hampshire, there's one bank and then a slightly higher bank, and nowadays we put PJ1 on. Milwaukee is a consistent bank, and we've never treated it before with any kind of traction compound, and it would work out pretty well with that type of racing. But Pocono, the straightaways are so long that if you hold someone down, say in turn 3, you can freight train them on the front stretch because of the draft. And so you can really just pinch people down in these positions. Trenton, there's not really much you can go off of for Trenton Speedway because back when we ran it in NASCAR, remember the track closed in 1980. Racing was so different back then. because of mainly the danger that you didn't see all the side-by-side racing and stuff that we see nowadays. That was back in the era where the race winner could be 3 laps ahead of second. In the history of Trenton Speedway and NASCAR, it's such an artifact of our past that you can't really go off of that track very much for how the racing product would be with modern cars. But Indianapolis Motor Speedway, because of all 4 corners being the same and very wide, you can stay together and get some good passing going on at that racetrack. Even though fans don't exactly like Indianapolis Motor Speedway and stock cars, I personally feel like it's produced better racing in our sports history than Pocono has. And granted, Pocono's had a couple good finishes. 2012, Joey Logano beating out Mark Martin. That was a kind of a good battle. Obviously Mayfield, battling Dale Earnhardt. But really, this racetrack, I personally feel, is an artifact of the past, much like Trenton Speedway, because it was built back in the 70s. 71, I believe, is when Pocono opened. It was during a very strange crossroads in motorsports history. Open-wheel cars, everybody was debating, should they have wings, should they not have wings. Stock car racing was going through a transfer period when we got rid of all the big winged, Superbirds and Dodge Daytonas, kind of put a stop to all that, the crazy engineering that we were seeing in the aero wars of the early 1970s. Pocono came out during the middle point of these wars. 1971, the first year that we got rid of the Superbird and Dodge Daytona in NASCAR. USAC stock cars ran there for the first couple years, and that was also when USAC IndyCar was putting on wings for the first couple seasons. This is before the whole ground effect stuff started. But if you look at that era of racing, it wasn't exactly based on side-by-side action. The big endurance races that we used to hold at Pocono, the 500-milers that would take a good 6.5 hours, that kind of racing, personally, I don't think it really fits with the modern era. Nowadays, racing has kind of morphed into the more short-track, grassroots style, quick races, fast action, side-by-side racing. And, that's natural. As time goes on, people want the racing product to get better, and I completely respect that. But Pocono just doesn't fit modern racing. At least I personally don't believe it does. There's been, like I've said, some pretty good races there before, but not to mention the difficulties in getting the racetrack to run good. The different radius corners and the long straightaways. I feel like if you took Pocono, by the way, and made the straightaways shorter, it'd be a much better racetrack. That's just my personal opinion. But I think the straightaways is what kind of kills the racetrack. You either got to build a super speedway or a shorter type Milwaukee-style track, in my opinion. Pocono's somewhere in between. Darrell Waltrip used to call it a roval before the roval was built because it used to drive like a road course oval. But I feel like that in between, honestly, is what hurts it the most. But if you think about ways to fix the track, I don't think that there's much that we can do with the 2.5-mile oval, unless, we completely redesign it. But the passing issues that we saw in the Camping World Truck Series race that Crafton dominated in were a little bit fixed with the ultra-high downforce package we brought with the Cup Series cars. It made it a little bit easier to pass. We did see some pack racing, which was a little bit expected with such high downforce. Turn 3 was really the only area where you had to lift in anticipation of the corner. Very minimal brake time at Pocono over the Cup Series races, which is a little abnormal compared to years past. It used to be a very hard braking racetrack, especially Turn 1, where you'd be, running into there about 210. If you're in the draft, you can even get up to 215. That was, a little scary for Cup cars back then, but it was what we were turning. But once you get into the corner, such a hard braking zone, Turn 1, you'd get down to about 130 if the tires were worn down, mid-corner when you're making your apex. So you use the brake pedal a lot at Pocono back in the day, but we weren't seeing that with a high downforce package, and so that's why we saw pack racing. But what it magnified was any small mistake, because when one car goes spinning or somebody gets up into the wall, 20 or so can pile into the mess in excess of 170 miles an hour. And the way Pocono is built, especially with that funnel down to turn number 1 with that inside wall that points towards the racetrack, it really leaves the drivers with nowhere to go. And especially with the narrow corners that we have at Pocono, big, long, wide straightaway, front stretch in particular, but then Turn 1, it all kind of funnels down. And so that kind of makes it awkward even for the package that we ran. Even though it did arguably make the racing better, we saw more passes and more passes for the lead in particular compared to the Camping World Truck Series race, but it did magnify more problems that Pocono Raceway has, such as its genuinely unsafe construction. Even though obviously it's modeled off of 3 different unique racetracks. But quite frankly, maybe those racetracks should have stayed separate, because it's really hard to make unique elements of a racetrack and keep it as an oval. Obviously, it works well with a road course like a COTA that's based off of other Formula One tracks, even though that's a Tilcadrome, which I'm not a big fan of. But it still works better. We don't see huge amounts of safety concerns that we see at Pocono, year after year. This has been going since probably the late 80s that we've been having these safety concerns, and that's because the cars got way faster. You got to remember back when we first started to show up in the early 70s, the speeds were good, but they weren't quite what we were seeing by the late 80s. And back then, in 71 or so, we had so many independents. I believe it was 73, actually. 73 or 74 when we first put Pocono on the schedule as a substitute of Trenton. But so many independents, so many people own their own cars that the competitors were so conservative back then. Because, if you wreck, you were likely going to get hurt. And it's your own car, so you conserved it, you got through the 500 miles, and nobody really raced after each other, tried to kill each other like we see in modern racing, which is what makes it so entertaining nowadays. But back then, just the whole mentality was different, so it worked well with Pocono. But by the late 80s, everyone was starting to get that aggression, that natural competitor that we talk about nowadays, going for every single spot, fighting for every tenth of a second and every inch on the racetrack. So it all kind of began with Bobby Allison's unfortunate career-ending crash in the tunnel turn back in '88. Then you remember his son Davey going for a tumble down the short chute. There's just been a lot of dangerous incidents at this racetrack. Sadler's crash, Schrader pounding turn 1, Jeff Gordon, Jimmy Johnson more recently. There's just so many nasty areas of the racetrack where you can hit a wall, so many awkward areas. And even though some of them have been fixed over time, you remember Steve Park's wreck back in 2002 when he went tumbling in the Long Pond straightaway with his teammate Dale Earnhardt Jr. They fixed that wall by putting in a giant earthen embankment behind the guardrail so it couldn't collapse in. What that led to was Elliott Sadler's crash in 2010, where if he wasn't in a COT car, I'm pretty sure he wouldn't still be here. It was that violent of an incident. And nowadays, obviously after Sadler's wreck, also I'm forgetting Casey Kane's wreck, I believe also in 2010 when he got up into the bushes outside of the straightaway. That was another scary one, too. We've had a lot of these types of incidents in Pocono Raceway history. Casey Kane sliding down pit road, knocking down helmets. There's just so many strange areas of this racetrack, and it's mainly due to how unique it is, but also it leads to these types of incidents being possible, and I think that's the big concern. Indianapolis Motor Speedway being a more traditional racetrack, even with a unique shape, but it's more traditional. You don't see stuff like this happen too often at Indy, and it's the most comparable racetrack, in my opinion, to Pocono Raceway that we have, especially considering one of its turns is based off of Indianapolis. But at Indy, the turns are wide enough, you can get around cars, so the racing doesn't suffer like it does at Pocono, and you can avoid a mess when it happens. Not exactly on the front stretch, because, the walls are on both sides, but on the back stretch and in through the corners, you can miss a wreck pretty easily at Indianapolis, especially with our Cup cars. They're a lot slower than Indy cars. It's a different subject in Indy car racing, but with our Cup cars, you can miss them pretty well. The same exact aero package is expected to be ran at Indianapolis Motor Speedway this weekend for the Brickyard 400, as was ran at Pocono Raceway. That's because of the successes of this package, or similar package, I should say, a high downforce restricted package being ran in NASCAR's Xfinity Series without any safety concerns. So it went on, without a hitch for years at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Roger Penske, track owner, feels comfortable with running this package at the facility. He talked it over with NASCAR. A lot of the concerns are just related to Pocono Raceway. It's not being blamed on the package. Chase Elliott expressed some concern of whether or not it was the package or the racetrack itself. He was a little, concerned that maybe it's one, maybe it's the other. The way it's looking, pretty much everyone's unanimous that it's the racetrack itself. I think it's kind of overstayed its welcome in many ways. Not the facility, but the 2.5 mile tri-oval, I personally believe, has overstayed its welcome. People's been talking about, running a road course race at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I personally feel like Pocono is going to be the one to get the road course race first. Obviously the straightaway wall on the front stretch, if we're going to run the 2.5 mile racetrack next year, that's going to have to be moved in. Because the way Clint Boyer and Chase Elliott went down into that wall, it ricocheted them right back up into traffic in the very tight turn 1. And because turn 1's a very narrow banked surface, you can't get the car slowed down in time to take the apron. Beneath the apron is grass. So it kind of left the drivers with absolutely nowhere to go. So if we are going to run the tri-oval next season, I guarantee you that there's going to be some major renovations. But personally, I don't think that there's going to be the tri-oval ran for 2022. Many drivers who were involved in crashes through Duel 1 and Duel 2 were expressing their concerns of the safety of the racetrack or the package. Not very many drivers were very concerned about the aerodynamic package, mainly the younger ones who had participated in Xfinity races at Pocono, Michigan, and Indianapolis Motor Speedway with the high downforce package. They've been in cars that have worked with these types of packages before. It was never a concern there, really. Even though the Pocono race in 2018 went off without a hitch in the Xfinity Series, the field got very spread out in that race compared to what we saw in Duel 1 and Duel 2 in the Cup Series. So that kind of just shows you what would have happened had the field stayed closer, had the temperatures been down back in 2018, and the field been a little bit more, had some more parity in it without Kyle Busch in it, let's say. Chase Elliott, Clinton Boyer, Matt DiBenedetto, Austin Dillon, Martin Truex Jr., Brad Keselowski, and Kevin Harvick all expressed some pretty major safety concerns. Harvick calling it one of the most unsafe things he's done in a race car. Essentially, he feels like it is way too risky going off of what happened back in 2020 with Matt Kenseth, the bullets that we dodged here in 2021. We're going to either hurt someone or hurt them severely if we keep this going. So we need to make some decisions. Clinton Boyer obviously expressed his concerns, especially being in his final Cup Series season. This is not what any driver in their final year wants to have to go through, because all of us were worried at first that Clinton Boyer might have been injured after such a tumble down to turn number 1 and a hard impact into the inside wall before it. Fortunately, he got out of the car okay. Chase Elliott, as I've mentioned, expressed his concerns with the package and the racetrack itself. Matt DiBenedetto was actually involved in both wrecks, in Duel 1 and Duel 2, both big ones. He expressed very many concerns about the racing that we saw at Pocono Raceway and the fact that it's very costly. The Team Penske wrecked 2 cars just from the number 2 shop alone, and they're going to be running a similar type of car at Indianapolis, so they're going to have to build a third car with the same high downforce 550 package in mind. So it's costing the teams a lot of money as well. Martin Truex Jr. was not a fan of it at all. He obviously got taken out in duel number 1. Austin Dillon was involved in both wrecks. Whether it be cost, safety, or just genuinely frustration, a lot of drivers are not satisfied with what transpired at Pocono Raceway. Matt Kenseth obviously tested the NASCAR Cup Series next-gen car for Chip Ganassi Racing before the races began. It was good to see him back on track, but the dual races reminded us of why he is not full-time, and that was just a bit of a scary reminder. Genuinely, the second dual race, once it started, that's the most concerned I've ever seen a garage area since when we first came back to a plate race after Dale Earnhardt's passing in 2001. As you recall, back after that fateful day in February, we rolled into Talladega Superspeedway and almost no one truly felt secure. Because obviously, after Earnhardt's incident, a lot of drivers switched over to utilizing a Hans or Hutchins device back then. We had more than one type of head and neck restraint. But no one truly felt safe. Fortunately, we did not even have any cautions in that race. Bobby Hamilton took home a great victory. But nowadays, racing is not like what it was back in the 1930s, when people showed up to see competitors avoid death. It was kind of like a Houdini act, where people would show up to watch these fantastic events, essentially these shows where people would try to escape death. That's not what we want. We want good, hard racing. We want safe racing, because these people, they have families. This is something that was not thought about for some reason in the early days of motorsports, is being concerned about the families and everyone involved with these people. How many people, race car drivers and these competitors, touch over the course of their lives. The impact that they make for so many other families beyond just themselves is tremendous. And we only get these reminders very rarely, and fortunately they're not constant like they used to be. But we have to take actions to make sure that we do not come this close again. Obviously Matt Kenseth's incident at Pocono last season was remarkably scary. We never want to see something like that happen. We are fortunate that didn't happen again, or at least twice, going off of both dual races. So we are tremendously lucky at that. But more actions need to be taken to ensure that we do not harm anyone in the future. Obviously, it's an inherently dangerous sport. It's motorsports. We have competitors racing for track position in excess of 180 miles an hour. It's never going to be truly safe. But we have to take actions when they are applicable to avoid major carnage like what we saw at Pocono. If the option is just don't go to that style of racetrack, well, don't go to that style of racetrack. If you can conduct your sport safely, why do it otherwise? That's the way I personally see it. Even Daniel Suarez and Harrison Burton, the winners of both dual races, expressed major concern after they won the races. Take a look at this onboard footage from Harrison Burton's car during stage number 1. Fortunately, he missed the flipping number 14 car of Clint Boyer by just a couple inches, and I'm not even making that up. Burton was full throttle, trying to get through the crash and advance as many positions as possible back to the caution flag. But had he been just a couple more feet to the right, an impact to the number 14 car would have likely been very similar to Matt Kenseth's last season at Pocono down the short chute. And so that was the major safety concern as well, because Boyer's car ricocheted back in front of traffic, allowing an incident like that to be possible. Fortunately, it did not happen, but it very easily could have happened had Harrison Burton been just a couple of feet to the right. Fortunately for Burton, he made it through the carnage, and even more fortunately for him, he took home the dual number 1 victory, but it was a very scary moment that could have gone a whole lot worse had just a few different factors been different. If we go back there next year with absolutely nothing changed, the odds are too high of something like Kenseth's incident happening again, going off of the way that both dual races happened. Even knowing we're going to have a new car, the next gen car, which is likely going to be even more safe than the Gen 6 car is right now, like I said, why take these risks when you don't have to? So Pocono is going to have some very serious questions to answer, which is why they held an emergency press conference earlier this morning. Obviously, they were detailing some of the options that they have to improve the racetrack. Obviously, nothing is concrete right now. It's just way too short notice, but they laid out some possible decisions. Obviously, they could try and renovate the 3-turn, 2.5-mile superspeedway. Whether or not that entails destroying what makes it unique and building maybe a more conventional oval, one that would play into safety a little bit better, they did not detail that, but they did say that major renovations are possible to the oval racetrack. But in my opinion, they would need to do some very major differences to the track to get it to a more normal style of racing, to where we're not endangering people when we do it. So there's going to have to be some very major decisions made by the Speedway if they make those renovations to the 2.5-mile oval. Beyond that, they did lay out some potential options to utilize a road course layout. They have quite a few road course layouts at the Pocono Raceway. They detailed that those are potential options that they are looking into. South Boston is a track that they own. That could also be another potential option. As you recall, Dover Motorsports that owns Nashville Superspeedway, they've been trying to get Nashville onto the Cup schedule. So maybe Pocono could do something similar, get South Boston onto the Cup schedule as a replacement of one of the Pocono races. It's looking like they're opening to doing that now after all the serious concerns that Pocono has showed us. I personally have been lobbying for that 3/4-mile Race of Champions modified layout on the front straightaway to be renovated. I've even pledged that our companies here at Speed Station will sponsor an event like this and fund it if necessary. I am not joking around about this. If it means that we can keep racing in Long Pond, Pennsylvania, in NASCAR Cup Series action, and improve on it, make it safer, and actually make it more action-packed, I am 100% in on such an idea. There was a few drivers that considered dropping out of the race voluntarily during the red flag cleanup after duel number 1. Here's a transcript of a conversation between Ryan Blaney, his spotter Josh Williams, and NASCAR Xfinity Series competitor, and his crew chief Todd Gordon. From Gordon, they'll stop you on the front straight past pit entry. Blaney then responds, they should just pull us down pit road and end the race. That was expletive ridiculous. Then from Williams, yeah, from what I saw, number 9 came down slightly on the 14, then it was off from there. Good thing both Clint and Chase got out under their own power. Ryan Blaney then responds, copy. Todd, are they seriously going to try and restart this race after that? Todd Gordon then responds, 10-4, yeah they are. Probably not a great decision, but it is NASCAR after all. The show matters more than the drivers. So that really gets you thinking about how serious of a situation this was. We could have had a serious boycott out at Pocono Raceway. We're lucky that we didn't see one after, especially the second wreck in Duel 2 at Pocono. Ironically, Ryan Blaney got taken out in the second wreck in duel number 2 as well, so that kind of came back to bite him in another way. But that, so many different competitors got taken out in the two duel wrecks. It seemed like if you were taken out in the first one and started in the back in duel 2, the front runners of duel 1 got taken out in duel 2, and then it just kind of inverted, it seemed like, from both duel race. Even, the 95 car didn't get a good run in duel 2 either. But it seemed like every single team wrecked at least one car, with the exception of someone like, say, a Daniel Suarez, who finished second and then first in both duels. He was the only person who kind of left with a good showing at Pocono in both races. But it was a very scary situation and a very costly one at that, because, like I said, most teams wasted at least one car there. They wrecked at least one $500,000 race car. And back on the subject of Blaney, considering that Ryan is a very personal friend with Chase Elliott, you can understand his concern and his frustration with the sanctioning body as well after such a situation. Even though, Chase Elliott was obviously one lap down, maybe he shouldn't have been there, you could argue that, but it was a very strange accident in general that could have absolutely hurt both Elliott or Boyer, and maybe a few others who were involved in it too, because once the track was clogged with smoke, the competitors far in the back couldn't see what was happening down in turn number 1. So it really makes you wonder, as a competitor, do I get on the throttle to get out of the wreck, or do I back off? And sometimes you get on the throttle, and sometimes that does not work out. We saw that last year with Almirola. He throttled up to try and miss the flipping car, Matt Kenseth. We all know the rest is history from there. Kind of ironic, like I said, that Blaney would be taken out in duel 2. Another driver who would be taken out in duel 2 after getting a good run in duel 1 was Kyle Larson. Unfortunately got involved in a pretty major accident in duel 2, plowing into the 12 car of Blaney. And I'll give Clinton Boyer and Chase Elliott in particular a lot of credit after duel 1. After less than 24 hours from getting involved in a horrific accident, avoided injury, and they were by far involved in one of the worst incidents we've had in more than a year, probably stretching back to Matt Kenseth's incident here at Pocono. They got back in duel number 2, ready to give their team the best possible performance and score points at as well, bringing home top 10s for both competitors. Chase Elliott finished in 6th position. Clinton Boyer hung on to a top 10. It was a great showing for both competitors, especially coming back from such a scary accident. Back onto the subject of points a little bit. The last 3 races have not been good at all for Mr. Consistency Kevin Harvick, having wrecked out of Bristol on lap number 9, gotten involved in the huge crash in duel 1 at Pocono on, I believe, lap number 9 as well, and suffering damage in duel 2 in that big one on lap 11. Obviously, these have been wild card races, a dirt race, high downforce racing at Pocono. Once we get back to our normal racetracks, the number 4 team should be able to get the ship righted. But it's a little bit concerning right now, considering how consistent Hamlin has started to become over the last few races. He was the winningest driver of our sport last season, winning 4 races in 2020, but now he's absolutely putting up the fight to the 4 team of Kevin Harvick. Harvick's going to have to figure some things out coming into Indianapolis, and once we get into the road course segment of the season, visiting Loudon, Watkins Glen, and Road America. Road courses are not exactly Kevin Harvick's strong suit, but if he can improve on that, it should be great opportunities for him to make up points. Like I mentioned a little bit ago, great performance for Daniel Suarez, taking home second in duel number 1 and the win in duel 2, bringing him all the way up to a top 5 in regular season standings. He's been very consistent over the last season, but just could never get the deal together to take home a checkered flag. Finally broke through at Pocono to take his second win in the 00 car. First one came back in spring of 2020 at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Daniel obviously has had pretty good success at Pocono before, finishing 3rd in a Joe Gibbs Racing Toyota several years ago. But after winning both stages, which was not expected, he won the Stage 1 in Duel 1 and Stage 1 in Duel 2, took home the win in Duel 2, and finished second in Duel 1. So absolutely dominant weekend. I believe that Suarez might be the only driver in the field who does not want to see Pocono go away for next season, at least the 2.5-mile tricky triangle. But even for Suarez, it's a little hard to celebrate after such a troubling week. All of us are incredibly lucky that the drivers all escaped without any injuries after either duel race, but Pocono has a lot of work ahead. I do not expect the 2.5-mile track to return with the current layout. That could mean building a more safe traditional oval-style racetrack. We're not exactly sure going off of the press conference. Pocono really just announced that they're examining all the issues that were seen in Duel 1 and Duel 2, and they're working on developing a plan. They're more or less showing that they are being proactive in working on the racetrack and the racing product to make things safer when we come back here next season. Whether or not that would be for the 2.5 mile, we have absolutely no idea right now. But the racetrack owners are willing to cooperate with the sanctioning body and the competitors to make this a better experience. The road course layouts are a great option. I would expect we would not have the very clear safety concerns. The 3/4 mile racetrack's my personal favorite. I've expressed that numerous times. I think that we could bring that track back if we worked on it just a little bit. It wouldn't really take that much work. Our companies will obviously be a sponsor of it. If we can get that deal going, we're going to be absolutely present at that event. We're going to have sponsors on it, even if nobody wants to pay for it. We'll be there because I've always supported short track racing. If I can get one more short track going, that means I've done my job properly. NASCAR, unlike IndyCar, after the recent incidents there with Robert Wickens and the Lap 1 crash back in 2019, NASCAR has no intentions of leaving Pocono Raceway. The Long Pond area, I personally believe, deserves NASCAR action, but it simply cannot be sustained if actions are not taken to make the racing product safer. The facility is going to keep racing, stock car racing there. We don't know the layout whatsoever, but it's going to keep racing. Don't worry about that, especially fans who are from there and who attend these races. Don't worry about that. But it might not be with the famous Tricky Triangle, because it looks like that track has finally overstayed its welcome. But the track owners, the Matoli and Igdalski families, are completely willing to work with NASCAR, the sanctioning body, the competitors, all its partners, and, in particular, NASCAR's technical directors to try and work on this situation, improve it for next year when we show up again. Might not be at the traditional super speedway, but it will still have NASCAR Cup Series action in the Long Pond area at the Pocono Raceway, and we hope to conduct it in a safe manner for the 2022 season when the next-gen cars first roll into the speedway for the inaugural time that those race cars have been at the Pocono Raceway. And I expect good action next year regardless of what track that we pick, because the road course layouts at Pocono are actually pretty good. The short track layout would produce a whole lot of action that the fans at Pocono Raceway nowadays maybe have never seen, because the Race of Champions modified races were about 30 years ago, so maybe it would be a nice change of pace for the fans of Pocono Raceway. And so now, after just a quick commercial break, we'll be back right here on Post Tech to give the highlights of the Camping World 200 NASCAR Camping World Truck Series race from Indianapolis Raceway Park, the series' long-awaited return to that famed short track in Claremont, Indiana. And we'll see you in just a minute. NASCAR on Speed Station is being brought to you by RFJ, the official home of the RFJ AI series, by Knife Friend 725, the brains behind Project Retroval, and by Anthony's Online Simulation League. Hello everyone, welcome back to Post Tech. Before we get on to the Camping World 200 from IRP, got to give you the race analysis. The race took place over the course of 200 laps around the Raceway Park, with stage number 1 ending on lap 50 and stage 2 ending on lap 100. It also saw the return of Tony Stewart to the number 14 TSR Chevrolet, returning to his Camping World Truck Series roots, taking on IRP. And so now let's christen this race with our intros. In your regular season point standings, entering the race here at IRP, Sheldon Creed still holds the point lead by a very narrow 4 points above Matt Crafton, who took home the victory last week at Pocono Raceway. Ty Gibbs is 12 points back, third in the standings. Casey Mears, 17 points out of the point lead in fourth. Dawson Cram, 21 points out in fifth. Grant Enfiger, 25 points out of the point lead in sixth position. Ty Dillon, 36 points out in seventh. John Hunter Nemechek, 49 points out of the point lead in eighth position. Christian Eckes, 52 points out of the point lead in ninth. And Ben Rhodes, 63 points out of the point lead in 10th in the standings. In your playoff standings entering tonight's event, the drivers who are locked in with wins are Creed, Crafton, Hill, Gibbs, Mears, Eckes, Rhodes, Truex, and Friesen. While the best of the rest in the point standings is Dawson Cram, who is 54 points above the cutoff line. Then Enfinger 50 points above. Ty Dillon 39 above. John Hunter Nemechek is 26 points above. Then Brett Holmes, Timothy Peters, and Parker Kligerman are all just 6 points above the cutoff line. Austin Terrio is outside of the playoffs by 6 points. Then Ty Majeski is outside of the playoff grid by 7 points, as well as Zane Smith. And then Brendan Poole, with his runner-up finish at Pocono Raceway, is now just 16 points out of making the playoffs. We had a bit of a surprise pole sitter at IRP. Cameron Haley sat on the pole spot in the number 53 truck after bringing home a third-place finish last week at Pocono Raceway due to extreme luck and strategy. The second-place qualifier was the number 98 truck of Grant Enfinger. Bubba Pollard, making his first star of the year in the 17 truck for LGR, qualified his truck in 4th position. Second in points coming into the race, Matt Crafton qualified the 88 truck in 12th spot. Point leader Sheldon Creed right in line behind him in 14th starting position. Sam Mayer was out at Indianapolis Motor Speedway prepping for the NASCAR Xfinity Series race for Junior Motorsports, so Tony Stewart was back in the 14 truck for TSR and qualified in 17th position, obviously preparing for the upcoming SRX event here at IRP. Outside Stewart was the 61 truck of Max McLaughlin, qualifying in 18th spot. The only full-time NASCAR Cup Series ringer who showed up here to the Lucas Oil Raceway to run the Camping World Truck Series event is a home state hero. Ryan Newman came back to drive the DCC Racing Ford F-150 here in the Camping World 200 and qualified that truck in 21st position. Bailey Curry, back in the 45 truck for Nice Motorsports, qualified in 22nd position. Timmy Hill's brother Tyler Hill was in the number 56 truck and qualified in 27th spot. Brandon McReynolds was back in the 3 truck for Anderson Germain Racing and qualified in 29th position. Corey Heim qualified for his Camping World Truck Series debut in 30th spot in the 51 truck for KBM. The 03 truck of Danny Bone qualified in 36th position. Number 5 of Jake Finch qualified in 38th spot. Ty Gibbs, fresh off his first 2 NASCAR Cup Series starts, had a very poor run in qualifying, just barely making the field in 40th position. Also, Gus Dean was back in the Camping World Truck Series this weekend at Lucas Oil Raceway and qualified the 32 truck in 41st spot. The number 53 truck of Cameron Haley got a very good start of the race, with a little bit of help coming from Ben Rhodes in the number 99 truck, but he managed to clear the number 98 of Grant Enfinger up on his outside, and Cameron Haley actually led the first lap at Lucas Oil Raceway in the Camping World Truck Series return. Very fitting that a truck sponsored by the title sponsor of the race would lead the first lap. But it did not take Ben Rhodes very long to get down to the inside of the 53 truck of Cameron Haley, side by side at the conclusion of lap number 2. Then, on lap number 3, down on the inside, the 99 truck of Ben Rhodes takes away the race lead off of Cameron Haley. Just a lap later, the 98 truck of Grant Enfinger follows suit to take up second position, making it a ThorSport 1-2. You recall Bailey Curry wrecked out of Pocono in a very hard fashion, unfortunately cutting his day short. Well, his bad luck continued into Lucas Oil Raceway, makes contact with the 25 truck of Michael Self coming off of turn 2. That allows the 46 truck of Chandler Smith to make contact with him, turning the 45 truck down into the opening of the wall on the inside, knocking the 45 truck of Bailey Curry out of the race on only lap number 7. Yet again, Curry's night comes to an end very early. And while the Bailey Curry incident happened on the back straightaway, the 98 truck of Grant Enfinger took the top spot away from his teammate Ben Rhodes. On the restart, the 21 truck of Zane Smith, last year's Rookie of the Year award winner, gets down to the inside, the 99 truck of Ben Rhodes, and actually takes up the second position for GMS Racing. The GMS trucks worked very well down on the inside. Following his teammate Zane Smith, Raphael Lassard takes up the third position by lap number 15 in the 24 truck. On lap 24, Todd Gilliland gets down to the inside of his pseudo-teammate Bubba Pollard and takes up the fourth position in the 38 truck. Then just one lap later, Todd Gilliland puts the bumper to the 24 truck of Raphael Lassard entering turn number 1 and drives all the way up into the third running position. Lap 27, the 17 truck of Pollard tries to put the bumper to the 24, gets loose on the exit of turn number 4, gets up into the outside wall just a little bit, and drops from 6th down to 9th position with that mistake coming off the 4th turn. On lap 28, Kyle Busch Motorsports still has not found any speed in their trucks. The 46 of Chandler Smith is currently their highest running competitor, currently residing in 30th position, outrunning Corey Heim in the 51. Farther back, we still have the 4 truck of John Hunter Nemechek and the 18 of Ty Gibbs, who are running outside of 35th position. On lap 36, Tony Stewart in the 14 truck gets around the 53 of Cameron Haley, cracking his way into the top 10 for the first time of the night. On lap 37, the 87 truck of Timothy Peters just barely puts the bumper to the 38 of Todd Gilliland on the exit of turn number 4, then dives down to the inside through turns 1 and 2, and Timothy Peters takes up the 3rd position. Following Timothy Peters down on the inside is the number 2 truck of Sheldon Creed, the point leader coming into tonight's event, taking up the 4th position in his GMS Racing Chevrolet. Then just a few laps later, Sheldon Creed gets to the inside of the 87 of Timothy Peters, moving Creed up into the 3rd position. But then just a few laps later, the Brad Keselowski Racing Chevrolet of Austin Theriault gets to the inside of Sheldon Creed and takes up the 3rd spot as Grant Enfinger is still running away with the lead by now almost 2 seconds above the 2nd place runner Zane Smith. Grant Enfinger, with an almost 2-second lead above the 2nd place runner Zane Smith, brings the 98 truck out of turn number 4, winning the first stage in series history at Lucas Oil Raceway. 2nd place runner was Zane Smith. Timothy Peters just barely edges the 92 truck for 3rd in stage 1, so obviously Theriault in 4th and Sheldon Creed in 5th position. Tire fall off was very crucial at the Lucas Oil Raceway. That was evident with the way that pit strategy shook out. On lap number 1 of the caution flag, 87 of Peters on back all came down pit road, but the 98 and 21 trucks of Enfinger and Zane Smith opted to stay out. Then under the 2nd lap under caution flag, both the 98 and 21 trucks of Enfinger and Zane Smith come down pit road, which means that they kind of have a half a lap advantage on their set of tires because they stayed out an extra lap under the caution flag conditions, but they will be restarting at the tail end of the lead lap trucks. And with such a bold strategy call for both the 98 and 21 teams, Austin Theriault has now cycled out as your race leader above the 87 truck of Timothy Peters, the 2 of Sheldon Creed, 21 of Raphael Lessard, and 99 of Ben Rhodes. The 55 truck of Ty Majeski has stalled on pit road, and he has actually dropped 2 laps behind race leader Austin Theriault. The 53 team of Cameron Haley had a terribly slow pit stop as they came down just outside the top 10 and came off in 36th position, losing a tremendous amount of track position with a terrible stop. Under the caution flag, Stuart Friesen, who has had a good string of races over the last 2 weeks, winning at Bristol, scoring the pole at Pocono and leading 14 laps there, unfortunately blows the engine under caution flag, dropping the 52 truck out of the race with a 2nd to last place finish. A few laps after the restart, the 2 truck of Sheldon Creed got down to the inside of the 87 of Timothy Peters, driving around the Nemco Motorsports truck to take up the 2nd position. Now with a shot of getting around the 92 truck of Austin Theriault. But then on lap 59, the caution flag waves once again when the 97 truck of Jesse Little makes contact with the 75 of Parker Kligerman, sending the 75 truck around on the backstretch. But fortunately for Kligerman, he manages to miss any potential hazard. On the restart, the 12 truck of Christian Eckes gets down to the inside of the 87 of Timothy Peters, taking up the 3rd position, but then uses the lap truck of Ty Majeski, who is right up in front of him, as a pick to force the 2 truck of Sheldon Creed a little bit wide on entry to turn number 1. Gets a good bite on the exit of turn 4, turns down beneath the 55 truck, sets up a pass on Sheldon Creed entering the first turn, forces him wide, and Christian Eckes goes from 4th to 2nd position. The number 56 truck of Tyler Hill was also on pit road for an unscheduled stop, flat tire. On lap 71, the number 98 truck of Grant Enfinger is carving his way through the field very quickly with just that half a lap advantage on tires, which really isn't much of an advantage at all. But after starting tail end of the longest line, he has driven his way all the way up to 29th position already. Beginning of lap number 72, the 2 truck of Sheldon Creed shoots it back to the inside of Christian Eckes and takes up the 2nd position once again. How about this story? On lap 73, the 33 truck of Ryan Truex has actually raced his way all the way up into the 5th position. Lap 75, we have a very hard crash between Corey Heim in his Camping World Truck Series debut and the 21 truck of Zane Smith. Smith makes contact with him down the backstretch, turning the 51 truck down to the inside. He's trying to catch it, sliding out in the grass, coming right up in front of the field, gets clipped by the 21 truck, and a hard hit up into the outside wall for the 51 truck of Heim, knocking him out of the race. Here's a shot of it in real time for Heim, sliding down the back straightaway, getting clipped by the 21 right here. Pretty straight up into the outside wall, but fortunately no injuries for either driver. Them safer barriers definitely benefit a lot, especially in those straight impacts up into the wall, and the 21 truck of Zane Smith is actually still in the race. On lap 77, most of the lead lap trucks come down pit road, but following the strategy example of Grant Enfinger's organization, the number 92 team opts to wait one additional lap to bring the 92 truck of Austin Terrio down pit road. And so now your top 3 after pit stops is the 2 of Sheldon Creed, above the 12 of Christian Eckes, and the 33 of Ryan Truex. The number 13 truck of Johnny Sauter also stalled on pit road, meaning that he has dropped 1 lap behind race leader Sheldon Creed. Number 92 team of Austin Terrio has their work cut out for them now, as coming down pit road dropped them from 1st all the way down to 35th position. So they have made their bed, now they have to sleep in it. You recall the 13 truck of Sauter stalled on pit road. Well, guess what? He brings the 13 truck back down pit road with the pace car. Then they ultimately pull that truck behind the wall. Johnny Sauter officially out of the race with mechanical trouble. On lap 82, the 33 truck of Ryan Truex gets the inside of his teammate Christian Eckes and takes up the 2nd position with help from lap traffic as the 2 truck of Sheldon Creed gets away from the field. How about this story? Lap number 87, the number 98 truck of Grant Enfinger has already raced his way back into 10th position. That truck is on a rail right now. On lap 88, Tony Stewart has been in a free fall these last few restarts, currently resides in 26th position in the TSR Chevrolet. His handle on the racetrack is definitely going away after that most recent pit stop. Ryan Newman, on the other hand, has been consistent, but has really never shown exceptional speed yet. Currently resides in 14th position behind Danny Bone. On lap 93, teammates Cameron Haley and Ty Majeski run into each other. Majeski 1 lap down, Haley on the lead lap. 53 truck almost sends the 55 around on the entry to turn number 1. Then beating on his tailgate down the back straightaway, sends a 55 truck wide into the 3rd turn, moves him up off the middle lane, and allows Cameron Haley to sneak by through the middle as Tony Stewart gets around both of them. Caution flag comes out once again on lap 92. 18 truck of Gibbs makes contact with the 32 of Gus Dean, sending the 32 truck around down the back stretch. But much like Parker Kligerman's spin earlier on in tonight's event, no contact between the 32 truck or any of the walls or any other competitors. Under this caution flag, we have just 2 trucks come down pit road. It's the 98 of Grant Enfinger and 12 of Christian Eckes. The green flag comes out with just 1 lap to go in stage number 2. It all comes down to this restart between the 33 of Truex and 2 of Sheldon Creed. Lap traffic down on the inside, that forces the top 2 trucks wide. Brett Holmes tries to jump down to the inside, hoping he can make up some track position. And the 33 of Ryan Truex could not do anything with the 2 truck of Sheldon Creed. Back down to the start-finish line, Creed will win stage number 2 here at Lucas Oil Raceway. Above the 33 truck of Ryan Truex, 23 of Brett Holmes, 99 of Ben Rhodes, and 87 of Timothy Peters. And the 56 truck of Tyler Hill outraced the 2 of Sheldon Creed back down to the start-finish line, bringing the 56 truck back on to the lead lap. Lap 103, the only truck to come onto the pits is the 88 team of Matt Crafton. This is a planned stop from Junior Joyner to try and get on to a tire advantage for the final stage. Just 1 lap after the restart, Grant Enfinger notices a loose wheel on the number 98 truck and unfortunately has to come down pit road. After having one of the best trucks on the racetrack, they come into the pits and unfortunately drop 1 lap behind the leader. On lap 108, the 99 truck of Ben Rhodes gets up side by side with Ryan Truex, and he has the lap truck of Ty Majeski right up in front of him. Ben Rhodes still forces the 55 truck through the corner, And after several laps of battling side by side, Rhodes takes up the second position off of Ryan Truex in the 33 truck as the 2 of Sheldon Creed continues to gap the field. On lap 112, the 39 truck of Ryan Newman gets to the inside of the 3 of Brandon McReynolds, taking up the 10th position. Coming into lap 114, the 87 truck of Timothy Peters takes a wide line on the exit of turn number 4, then pulls the crossover on the 99 of Ben Rhodes, jumping down to the very inside into the first turn, taking up the second position for Nemco Motorsports. Peters is the most recent winner in series history at this very facility. On lap 117, Tony Stewart has finally started to carve his way through the field, making a 3-wide move to the inside of McReynolds and Brett Holmes, nearing a top 10 running position. Lap 118, Cameron Haley follows Tony Stewart's example, going 3-wide to the inside of Holmes and Parsons, moving up into the 12th position as Tony Stewart has taken up the 10th position. Speaking of 3-wide moves, farther back in the field, Austin Terrio has started to carve his way through the field, getting to the inside of Jake Finch and Brennan Poole, taking up the 17th position for Brad Keselowski Racing. And then we had even more 3-wide racing. As you can tell, pretty much every lane on this racetrack is usable. That's because the different variances in banking. The 12 truck of Christian Eckes takes up the 16th position, getting around Brett Holmes and Todd Gilliland. Also, the lap truck of Grant Enfinger got around Austin Terrio and Austin Hill with a 3-wide move through 1 and 2. This racetrack is not progressively banked in a traditional sense. It's a lot like Loudon, where it's a relatively flat inside lane, but then the racetrack suddenly has more banking in the second and third grooves, and it makes it very raceable, like what we've seen throughout the course of tonight's Camping World 200. As you can tell, down on the inside, 12 truck of Christian Eckes getting around number 92 of Austin Terrio on the exit of turn number 2. Also getting around the lap truck of Ty Majeski. Lap 128, the 53 truck of Cameron Haley has gotten around the 60 of Casey Mears. That moves Haley up into 10th position, now to the inside of Ryan Newman, going for 9th, as Stewart has gotten around Newman for the 8th position. Also following the 53 truck of Cameron Haley to the inside of Ryan Newman was the 3 of McReynolds, taking up 10th. As you recall, Matt Crafton was one of the most recent trucks to pit and take on tires. Running in this very large gaggle of trucks, he has driven his way up into 19th position for Thor Sport. Back out front on lap 135, Rafael Lessard gets to the inside of Ryan Truex, taking up 5th position in the GMS Racing Chevrolet. On lap 138, Chase Purdy makes contact with Todd Gilliland coming off of turn number 2, almost sends Gilliland around, but he manages to catch that truck on the exit of the second turn and keep things going in the right direction. And as you can tell, now approaching lap 140, the 87 truck of Timothy Peters has started to run down the 2 of Sheldon Creed. The gap from first to second is now 4.5 tenths. As we have now settled into a long green flag run, the number 39 truck of Ryan Newman has actually set the fastest lap of the race, a 23.569. You can tell these trucks, when they're prepared for the race, are a lot different setups than what you would expect for a qualifying time, as the fastest qualifying lap time was actually about 1 second faster than Ryan Newman's fastest lap over the course of the race. Lap 150, the lap truck of Grant Enfinger makes contact with the lead lap truck of Bubba Pollard, who's running in 4th, sending Pollard around on the exit of turn number 2. But guess what? This time we did not get a caution flag. Let's just say that Pollard was not happy with NASCAR over the radio after this one. Pollard, being spun out on the exit of turn number 2, has dropped the 17 truck down into 21st position, which really isn't that bad for getting turned around and not getting a caution flag. And you can tell the sense of urgency out of Grant Enfinger. Already made that contact with Bubba Pollard, and now on lap 156, he has closed in within 1 second of race leader Sheldon Creed. Obviously has the fastest truck on the racetrack right now over a long run. Unfortunately, is 1 lap down, and that's why he's driving like such a madman, because he is still in contention of winning this race if he can get in front of the 2 truck of Sheldon Creed and get a well-timed caution. By lap 158, the 3 truck of Brandon McReynolds has actually raced his way all the way up to 8th position. And also we have the 53 truck of Cameron Haley on the inside of Ryan Truex, taking up the 5th position. Lap 160, 98 truck of Grant Enfinger gets around the 87, with now just 1 truck up ahead of him. That's race leader Sheldon Creed. And it did not take Enfinger very long to get around the 2 truck. On lap 163, entering turn number 3, gets down to the inside, and Grant Enfinger is now back on the lead lap. If we get a caution flag, Enfinger will restart at the tail end of the line. Lap 165, 39 truck of Ryan Newman gets around Danny Bone to take up the 9th position. We also have Matt Crafton, who is now racing his way into almost 10th position, currently runs 11th, now side by side with the 03 truck of Bone for a top 10. Coming into lap 168, the 12 truck of Christian Eckes does the crossover, gets the run on the high side on the exit of turn 4, then cuts right down to the bottom of the 24 truck of Raphael Lassard and takes up the 4th position. The caution flag comes out on lap 171 for debris off the number 97 of Jesse Little, and that means that the number 98 truck of Grant Enfinger is officially back on the lead lap. Your race leader is still Sheldon Creed, above the 87 of Timothy Peters, and the 12 of Christian Eckes has raced his way into 3rd, getting around Ben Rhodes. Let's just say this caution for debris did not make the number 17 team of Bubba Pollard very happy, as they got looped around on the exit of turn number 2 and did not get a caution, yet debris comes off the 97, and that brings out the caution flag, so that did not satisfy that organization very much. On lap 180, Parker Kligerman goes 3 wide to the inside of Ryan Truex and Brandon McReynolds, and that moves the 75 truck up into 8th position. Lap 184, the 12 truck of Christian Eckes sets up the crossover move once again, gets to the inside of Timothy Peters, passing that Nemco Motorsports truck and taking up the 2nd position. And remember that Eckes has fresher tires than race leader Sheldon Creed, but a truck with even fresher tires than the 12 is the 88 of Matt Crafton, who has raced his way up into 5th position. Lap 185, Bubba Pollard's trying to carve his way through the field after that spin, makes a nearly 4-wide move to the inside of the 39 truck of Ryan Newman as Newman gets loose on the exit of turn 4, clips the 39 truck into the inside wall, and Newman goes around, and believe it or not, this does bring out the caution flag. Ryan Newman spinning around drops the 39 truck all the way down to 37th position. The green flag comes back out with just 10 laps to go. In the Camping World 200, the 12 truck on fresher rubber gets the advantage on the restart, dives down to the inside of race leader Sheldon Creed, and takes the lead away from Creed, who has had a dominant run over the last 100 laps. Through 3 and 4, the 12 truck finally clears the 2 truck. And now it turns into a championship point battle between the 88 of Matt Crafton and 2 of Sheldon Creed, who are 1 and 2 in the regular season point standings. The 15 truck of Tanner Gray is on pit road for a flat tire. An unfortunate story there for that LGR F-150. Lap 193, the number 99 truck of Ben Rhodes gets to the inside of Timothy Peters, taking up 3rd position. Matt Crafton follows suit, taking up 4th, but then gets to the inside of Ben Rhodes, going for 3rd position, and Crafton on the fresher rubber takes the spot away. On lap 198, Tony Stewart makes his way around Austin Hill, cracking the top 10 once again. In the final 2 laps, it turned into a championship point battle between Sheldon Creed on older tires and Matt Crafton on relatively fresh rubber, as the 12 truck of Christian Eckes continued to extend his lead as Matt Crafton kept getting stopped up by the 2 truck on those older tires, with the white flag coming out for Christian Eckes here at Lucas Oil Raceway. Sheldon Creed doing everything he can to hold that 2nd position. If Creed can bring this truck home in 2nd, that will be only 1 more point gain on the 88 truck of Crafton in the standings, but at least it won't be any points lost. Now through 3 and 4, Crafton tries to get to the inside of the 2 truck, can't quite do it, and Christian Eckes, coming off the 4th turn, wins his 2nd career NASCAR Camping World Truck Series race in the series return to Lucas Oil Raceway. Crafton did everything he could to try to get to the inside of the 2 truck. They were drag racing back to the stripe, but Creed ultimately took 2nd, and Eckes taking his 2nd career series victory. An incredible restart there with just 10 laps to go, and on fresher tires, Eckes takes home the victory with superior strategy above the 2 team of Sheldon Creed. Also racing back to the stripe, the 09 truck of Stephen Parsons actually bested Tony Stewart for a top 10 finishing position. Grant Enfinger fought through adversity all throughout the course of the Camping World 200, obviously had the fastest truck, going off his performance in stage number 1, winning the first stage, and then driving his way all the way through the field as a lap truck later on. But he did manage to bring home a 19th place finish. which is a much better finishing position than where they would have brought the truck home had they have just given up once they fell one lap down. Ironically enough, Grant Enfinger finished right behind the number 17 truck of Bubba Pollard. There was some words exchanged on pit road between those two competitors, but Pollard was more frustrated with the sanctioning body than Enfinger, so there was no physical altercation. And so with Sheldon Creed finishing second and Matt Crafton bringing the 88 truck home in third, the point gap has been extended by just 1 point following the race here at Lucas Oil Raceway. Sheldon Creed now holds a 5-point lead above Matt Crafton. It still looks like Crafton will likely take the point lead in the upcoming weeks because even though he did not make the race at Daytona, he has been remarkably consistent following. Crafton right now is showing the ability and the pace to take home the point lead in the coming weeks. Casey Mears moves up to third in the standings, 30 points out of the top spot. Grant Enfinger picks up 2 spots in the standings, even with all the adversity he had to go through here at Lucas Oil Raceway. Currently runs fourth in the standings, 42 points out of the point lead. Ty Gibbs drops down to fifth, 46 points out. Christian Eckes picks up 3 spots in the standings up to 6, 47 points out. Dawson Cram drops down 2 to 7th, 52 points out of the point lead. Ty Dillon drops down 1 spot in the standings to 8th position, 59 points out of the point lead. Ben Rhodes picks up 1 spot in the standings, 66 points out of the point lead, in 9th in the regular season points at the moment. And Timothy Peters finally picks up 2 more spots in the point standings up to 10th, 71 points out of the point lead. Keep your eyes on Parker Kligerman as well, starting to get his season back on track. Picked up 2 spots here at Lucas Oil Raceway, up to 11th in the standings, 73 points out of the point lead. And John Hunter Nemechek, driving the Ford truck for KBM, has actually lost 4 spots following tonight's Camping World 200. Now in your playoff standings, obviously Creed, Crafton, Eckes, Hill, Mears, Gibbs, Rhodes, Truex, and Friesen are all locked in with their wins. Grant Enfinger is now the best of the rest, 41 points above the cutoff line. Dawson Cram is 31 points above. Ty Dillon is 24 points above. Timothy Peters, 12 above. Parker Kligerman is 10 points above. John Hunter, still 7 points above the cut line. And Austin Theriault, just 2 points above. Brett Holmes is only 2 points out. He's the defending ARCA Menard Series champion. Zane Smith, last year's Rookie of the Year winner in the Truck Series, 23 points out of making the playoffs. Brendan Poole is 25 points out of making the playoffs, and he won a Cup Series race earlier this year at Talladega. And Ty Majeski is now 29 points out of making the playoffs. And so now, after just a quick commercial break, we'll be back right here on Post Tech for my personal favorite segment of the show, Q&A. NASCAR on Speed Station is being brought to you by RFJ, the official home of the RFJ AI series. By Knife Friend 725, the brains behind Project Retroval. And by Anthony's Online Simulation League. Hello everyone, welcome back to Post Tech. Now we move on to the Q&A segment. Once again, just another disclaimer. If I mispronounce any names or handles, I do apologize, but it's bound to happen. Let's get right into it. Here's question number 1 from CMR21. Why are the cars usually leaning to the right, like the wheels aren't secure enough on the car during the Dirt Bristol race? Now, the reason for that is NASCAR allowed the teams to be able to modify the cars in a very liberal way. And what I mean by that is they opened up the rule book to allow competitors to work on the way that they build the suspension and make the chassis for the race car so it would handle a little bit more like your traditional dirt race car. Not quite like what we see years prior when the Camping World trucks would show up to Eldora. There was some similarities to a dirt race car, but it was more or less slick asphalt racing when the race would run in. The way that NASCAR allowed these teams to work on these cars in particular, and this is something that the teams took a lot of advantage of over the course of the whole weekend, was nobody coil-bound their race car. So that meant they had full suspension travel. Because what you're trying to do with a dirt car is you're not steering the car with the front 2 wheels that turn. You're actually steering the car with the right rear tire. So because we run rear-wheel drive cars, you have that throttle that you try to spin the car with and throttle out through the corner. It's more like drift racing, actually, than it is your traditional asphalt racing where it's all in how you can get the front end to turn. Front turn, as we always talk about, getting the car to turn right on the right front. That's why it wears out the right front so much at a traditional like asphalt short track, something like that. You're always trying to turn the car with the right rear because that's what your acceleration's coming from. But when you're trying to set the car down to the corner, you want it to bite and turn that way. In a dirt car, you're trying to spin the car and use the right rear to hold all the way to the car, pick up the left front, and throttle out of the corner. It's a definitely very different aspect of dirt racing compared to asphalt racing, how different you have to set up your race car for it. But when when you're setting up your car to pick up that left front tire, like what you see at a traditional dirt track, whether it be a modified or a late model dirt car, you're always picking up that left front tire, trying to essentially bend the chassis. You're trying to pick it up on the left side and throttle out, trying to essentially do a controlled slide or power slide, as we call it, through the whole corner. And you can make up a lot more time doing that than trying to lug the car through in a traditional asphalt-style line and keeping all 4 of the tires planted on the ground. It might sound counterproductive to want to run the track with 3 tires on the ground, but if you can pull that off in a productive manner, you can turn faster lap times on a dirt track by picking up that left front, like what you see at a traditional late model race or something like that, with the chassis roll that we have on those late models, compared to what you would with a traditional asphalt setup car. Which is why NASCAR more or less opened up the rule books for the organizations to take advantage of setting up their cars more traditionally, and I believe personally that's why the race at Bristol was such a success, is because NASCAR allowed the Cup Series teams to set up the cars as if they were dirt cars, even knowing they weigh a lot more than a traditional dirt race car. So the weight made things different. It made it a little bit less willing to pick up that left front, for instance, because of the extra weight that the car is holding. But I think it helped out the racing a lot because they were allowed to set up the cars like traditional dirt cars and run actual dirt racing lines because of it, because the cars handled correctly. It wasn't like your traditional, you could kind of bring the same chassis you built for Atlanta to Eldora that you saw a couple years ago in the Truck Series. These were purpose-built dirt cars that showed up to Bristol, and you're not going to expect that same type of chassis to be ran at any other racetrack this year. And I'm excited for next season as well, with Dallara coming up with the next-gen car that's going to have a purpose-built dirt chassis along with it, kind of similar to what we would see actually at a late model race. Here's a photograph of a late model doing its work mid-corner. You can tell how it picks up that left front tire, and because of the way they set up dirt racing car chassis also, this is a bit different from the way our Cup cars work it, but also you see a lot of movement in the left rear tire as well. You're kind of picking up the whole left side of the car and setting all the weight onto the right side. With the Cup cars, they set most of the weight on the right rear, so the thing would bite mid-corner and turn with the right rear tire. So it was an interesting idea from NASCAR, and I believe that it worked out very well for making a very great on-track product at the Bristol Motor Speedway dirt track, and I hope that fans enjoyed it as much as I did, because obviously I'm a little biased because I come from a dirt racing background, but I had a tremendous amount of fun with that event, and I hope that we continue to do things like that in the future. Obviously, there's talks of getting multiple dirt races on the schedule for next season, which is a very exciting possibility. Now the next question from RFJ. Could any of the local short tracks come up to the national stage soon, besides Nashville and Memphis, of course, because Memphis came onto the schedule recently. They're owned by the same people who own Palm Beach International Raceway, by the way, if you don't know, the IHRA, International Hot Rod Association. And Nashville, the fairgrounds, is being operated by Speedway Motorsports, the Bruton and Marcus Smith's companies. But the way I see it, not too many regional short tracks are going to make it up to the top level soon because of how many tracks are all trying to get in at once. I think that once NASCAR adds a couple more short tracks to the schedule, maybe if this whole South Boston deal with Pocono Raceway actually goes through, we might be looking at a maximum of what short tracks we run at, because, we're going to Nashville now. We're going to North Wilkesboro. We're going to Louisville. If we add South Boston to the schedule, on top of your traditional short tracks like Bristol, Richmond, Martinsville, we got a pretty stacked schedule of short tracks. And then you have what I call the intermediate short tracks, the ones that have characteristics of both a speedway and a short track like Loudon, Phoenix, Gateway, tracks like that. I think that we got a pretty diverse schedule that we got going on. I think NASCAR is going to be satisfied with it, especially coming into next year as the sanctioning body looks towards maybe getting a very short track like a Bowman Gray or something like that, but also putting in a street course maybe for the first time in 7 decades now, if you count the Daytona Beach and Road course, which wasn't exactly a street course, but it was the closest thing we've had as of late. And also the pre-GP circuit Watkins Glen, which ran through city streets. Not city streets, but backwoods roads. That's, I guess, the closest we've had to a street circuit in years past. So I think that there's just so many tracks trying to get in that we're not going to see too many more regional short tracks, even though NASCAR has a tremendous amount of interest in bringing back the short track culture to our sport. Remember that we started on exclusively short tracks, with the exception of, Daytona Beach being about 4.2 miles in length. You'd have your Darlington that's 1.3. back then, but it was a primarily short track league. And I feel that NASCAR has seen a lot of fan emphasis on short tracks. Fans are having a tremendous amount of fun with them. They're entertaining. The SRX knows what they're doing by having a short track only series, so that's going to fill in some of the gap as well. So my opinion is the short tracks that do not make it to the Cup Series schedule or to a NASCAR National Series will knock on Tony Stewart and Ray Evernham's door to maybe make an SRX like 20 race schedule or something more on the scale of like a National Series than it is right now. Because right now, even though the SRX has a good thing going for it coming into its first season, you can tell it's a bit of a testing year. They're testing the waters right now. It's more like IROC for this season, but it could absolutely become a big player in motorsports in this country. If it could get up to like a 15-20 race schedule, which, believe me, I think it could with the amount of emphasis coming into this. We got Helio Castroneves coming into the SRX as the defending Indianapolis 500 champion. That's a tremendous success right there for a sanctioning body in general. But I think that SRX is going to take up some of the short tracks that NASCAR might not be able to get. So short track racing is going to have a big-time rebirth in the next 10 years. I think it is going to become, in a way, the top level of motorsports in this country. We'll obviously still have, the Indy 500. We're still going to have the Daytona 500. That stuff's not going anywhere, but people are going to get back to respecting short tracks. I believe it's coming, and I believe that it will come back very, very strong because short track racing has been at highs and lows before, probably at its lowest when all the mile and a halfs got built in the last 20 years, but it's coming right back, and I think we have good things coming for the world of short track racing in this country. Next question from Switchblade. Is NASCAR reviewing safety concerns at dirt tracks after the Stenhouse wreck at Bristol Dirt? In ways they are, in ways they aren't. So obviously, like I mentioned, there's nothing that you can really do about an incident like that due to the speed at which you're flipping. But at the same time, they have never done anything really to very many speedways about similar situations. For instance, Davey Allison's flip in 92 at Pocono Raceway. That happened because of the dirt on the short chute. Obviously, we don't have that dirt anymore because of how redesigned it is. So they did something to keep that from happening. Ricky Rudd's wreck at Daytona back in 84. They got rid of the grass on the front stretch coming into pit road, so that type of wreck can't happen again. However, there's still grass at Daytona, there's still grass at Talladega, there's still grass at Michigan. There's still the possibility for these very same type of incidents occurring to this day that no one has really tried to fix. And at a super speedway like a Talladega or a Daytona, even knowing that fans might not be a fan of this because, the grass looks oh so good, but if you got rid of that grass, these types of incidents can't happen. Obviously, at a dirt track, there's really nothing you can do. It's just the tackiness of the surface. When it grabs hold of the car, it'll flip it quick. It's just the nature of dirt racing. Like I talked about in the Bristol race broadcast, a traditional dirt race, if someone goes over, they do flip pretty violently. Much like how when we roll into Talladega, we expect someone to flip. But I feel like NASCAR obviously is observing what happened at Bristol Motor Speedway. They're going to be taking a look at the car to see if anything failed. It's currently at the R&D Center as we speak, but I don't think they're going to be able to do too much about it. Obviously, the fan reaction to Bristol was such an astounding success that I don't think NASCAR is afraid of coming back to dirt tracks. In a way, this is one of those circumstances where the show is, in some ways, more important than the drivers. But NASCAR loved what they saw at Bristol. They're going to be observing the 47 car. Hopefully something will come out of that. So obviously they're going to be reviewing the safety concerns present with dirt racing, but I genuinely feel like there's not much we can do, especially given the fact that we haven't really changed that much about asphalt racing when it's still a concern at tracks like Daytona and Talladega of having one of these severe G-force incidents because of the grass on the front stretch at both facilities. And now the next question from NASCAR Fan 88 Official. Could Penske open up a Truck Series team for ARCA drivers or as a star car for current Cup or Xfinity Series racers for Team Penske? So I don't expect Roger to come up with a team like that, mainly because he could probably contract out some of his competitors to run maybe a race or two with LGR. The major Ford factory program in NASCAR's Camping World Truck Series. So the way I see it, probably Roger would put them through that. Roger, as a developer, as a team owner, if you look back through his history of being a team owner, I think of Ryan Newman as probably their most successful driver to be developed before Austin Cindric, obviously recently. And the path that Newman took was the old ABC plan, ARCA Busch Cup, which would now be ARCA Xfinity Cup. So I think that the way Roger thinks is maybe just skip the truck series as a whole and just develop in the cars. Now, I personally think that seat time is seat time, and the trucks nowadays are actually more similar to the Cup cars when it comes to the downforce numbers that they output, because the high downforce package we run at most Cup Series racetracks. So I personally think that getting experience in both types of race car and race truck is beneficial for a Cup Series driver, because the high downforce races, they resemble Camping World Truck Series races. The low downforce races resemble the way an Xfinity car would handle. So I personally believe that it would be smart for Roger to open up a truck team to give his drivers a well-rounded experience in their development, but I don't really see it happening. I think that if Roger really does feel like it's necessary to give one of his drivers a Truck Series start, he'll probably lease out that driver to another organization for a couple races, and I don't think it would be a full-time deal, as much as I think it would be smart. Also, next question, could ARCA have some select races on Speed Station? I am absolutely in talks of that. I have adored ARCA all my life. ARCA holds a big place to me, so I am absolutely in talks with the ARCA Menard series about maybe getting a couple race broadcasts, especially next season when the reused Cup Series Generation 6 cars become legal, and we start to see some of the steel-bodied cars race with the composite-bodied cars, and you get to see the competition of the cars purpose-built for ARCA and the cars being reused from NASCAR's Cup Series. So that might make for an interesting story next season. ARCA and the SRX are the two things that are intriguing me the most right now. SRX, obviously, because it's a new series and it appeals to me massively with its abundance of short-track races, and also ARCA because it's going through a restructuring period, so we're in talks with both sanctioning bodies about getting some stuff going. Here's also another follow-up question from NASCAR Fan 88 Official about the Penske situation in the Truck Series. If Penske does open up their truck team back up, as you recall, they fielded the 22 truck back in '96 with Rusty Wallace, Kenny Wallace, and Rick Johnson. Do you think they would bring it for ringers? So, short track ringers for shorter races, road ringers for road course tracks, and super speedway racers for Daytona or Talladega. I think that if he did open up like an all-star truck, it would have a roster of drivers, such as, maybe convince someone like Matty D or Joey Logano to maybe run a truck race or two, earlier in the year, maybe get some developmental drivers, enhance Ford's developmental program, having some of those drivers run the Ford races or run the short track races in their Ford program. Road course ringers, not exactly sure who they would go with. Maybe they could contact their Xfinity Series driver, Sam Hornish Jr., about getting out there and running a couple truck races. And Super Speedway ringer, not quite sure who they would go with there either. But I think that if Penske were to open up a Camping World Truck Series operation, it would definitely be a all-star program. I don't think that they would side with just one driver. That's not the traditional Penske way, going off of his initial foray into the Camping World Truck Series with the Wallaces and Rick Johnson. So going off of trends from his past operations in the Truck Series, I would expect it to be multiple drivers running in his truck. Next question from RFJ. Could we see Beats or Apple sponsor a race car in the future? I kind of don't expect that. Not exactly quite the market that I think either company wants. Recently, motorsports as a whole has been looking more inward for sponsorship. Companies like Dryden taking up a lot of sponsorship, oil and lubricant company. Camping World, who supplies campers to fans and crew members alike. We've been seeing a lot more sponsorships from, companies that play pretty crucial parts in our industry, even knowing that, organizations in our sport obviously require a lot on technology nowadays. You see those like command centers at Richard Childress Racing, Hendrick Motorsports, all that. But I'm pretty sure most of those are actually Microsoft ran, so I wouldn't expect quite an Apple partnership coming out of that. And you see the Microsoft logo on all the Hendrick cars, so maybe a closer partnership with their company would be more expected than a situation like Apple, and I doubt Beats being represented on any car anytime soon as well. It just doesn't quite seem like the partnership that they would exactly want, and I think most racing organizations are looking inward. Like I said, if you're going to get a sponsor, it's going to be something like Moog or Hawley or something like that nowadays. I think that, after years of struggling sponsorship programs the last 10 years, everybody's been talking about the downward trends, but now we're on an upward trend, and it's all because we've been looking inward, I personally believe, for sponsorship. We're seeing companies that have to do with racing sponsoring race cars, not quite all of what we had, 10, 15 years ago when it was becoming more or less companies that had nothing to do with racing sponsoring Cup cars. In particular Cup cars. Some of the lower divisions still had a lot of, appropriate sponsorship. But recently, Advance Auto Parts, CarQuest, Die Hard, all this stuff coming in, that's the same company. But all these companies coming in that have direct ties to racing, I think, is a good story, and that's where I expect all the sponsorship money coming in soon from any new companies would be something automotive related. At least that's my anticipation and my prediction as we look towards the future. Next two questions are from RFJ as well and from Todoraki. They're very similar questions, so we can answer them both at the same time. RFJ asks, could we see a shorter schedule in the future? Todoraki asks, could we see a longer schedule in the future? I personally think neither, because NASCAR is very satisfied over the years with the 36-race schedule. We've had 36 points races on the schedule since 2001. This year marks the 21st season and 20th year that we've had a schedule with 36 races. So personally, I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. Even with all the racetracks that want to get in, I think NASCAR is satisfied with the 36-race schedule. It gives the teams a pretty good off-season to get their stuff ready for the next year. Maybe not this year because we're switching to the next-gen car. It's going to be a little bit of a time crunch, but it's still a pretty good off-season. And it's not so short, so short of a schedule that the fans get bored with all the off weeks. So I think NASCAR is satisfied with the balance right now of how we work our schedules. And now the last three questions all come from NASCAR Fan 88 Official. Could any ARCA drivers be possibly moving full-time into trucks next season? I think that one driver who will most likely be moving up to the Camping World Truck Series on a full-time basis next year will be Corey Heim. After such a successful season in the ARCA Menard Series so far, Kyle Busch has signed him to run a couple short-track races this year in his number 51 truck. I would expect if, classic TRD, if they get rid of Chandler Smith after one season, they will likely throw Corey Heim into that truck as a replacement. So I could see at least Heim coming in. Not too many drivers beyond that. Our organization's in talks with Tim Richmond, the new one, not the original. But beyond that, I don't expect too many ARCA drivers taking over full-time truck rides next season. That's just because of how satisfied current Truck Series organizations are with their rosters. Because we have a lot of talent in the Truck Series right now, and not too much of it looks too eager to move up very fast. Because anymore, the Xfinity Series losing some of its emphasis as the second-tier series because of their struggling entry lists. The Truck Series has started to rise while the Xfinity Series is getting a little lower. So at this point, I think Truck Series competitors are satisfied staying where they are because, in a way, they're one level beneath the Cup Series anymore. At least going off of the career path that Tyler Ankrum took, which has opened up a lot of opportunities for several competitors. We even saw at Bristol, Sheldon Creed, Haley Deegan get good runs. Never even ran an Xfinity race, neither driver. So it's looking like right now, Truck Series drivers are perfectly fine with staying in the Truck Series up until they get an opportunity to maybe run a Cup race. Ben Rhodes as well. So right now, it looks like a lot of the rides are going to be clogged so that ARCA drivers most likely won't have an opportunity to run in trucks next season. But at the same time, ARCA, being a racing series of cars, might be an open opportunity to get an Xfinity ride, the way things have been going. So if Xfinity does drop down to what is considered beneath trucks, then it could go ARCA Xfinity, and then that would be a new way of developing the drivers. That could be something that we might look out for in the coming seasons. So I could actually see a couple ARCA drivers, namely someone like Drew Dollar, going straight from ARCA to Xfinity, a lot like what Joe Graff Jr. has done. So I could see that potentially happening. Next question, could GameStop sponsor Christopher Bell since they have some history together? I don't expect GameStop to actually come back into our sport, at least not anytime soon. As we all know, GameStop's been actually losing a lot of money as a company lately. I know that whole crazy stock stuff happened. But as a company, they were kind of, they've been kind of down a long downhill slope for years at this point. That's because of the nature of online game sales nowadays. People would rather go buy it online than ever buy in a store anyway. Because of the accessibility of it in the modern day. So right now, Christopher Bell has a major sponsorship from Rheem, looking like he might be able to close a Menards deal for Road America. And also, United Rentals, the sponsor of Austin Hill in the Camping World Truck Series for HRE, looks like he will be getting sponsorship. Christopher Bell will, from United Rentals at the Cup level for a couple races this season as well. So it looks like Bell's sponsorship program this year is pretty secure, and I really don't expect to see GameStop on really any cars in NASCAR anytime soon, since they left the NASCAR Xfinity Series after a long-time partnership with JGR. Now, the final question, could someone from F1 run a one-off at a road course track like a Lewis Hamilton or Daniel Ricciardo, etc.? Ricciardo's always been talking about running a stock car start. Lewis Hamilton tested that Cup car about 10 years ago with Tony Stewart, but the schedules conflict way too much. The travel schedule of a Formula One driver is kind of ridiculous with how they have to, traverse the entire globe to get to their schedule, while we stay within, we don't even go through all 50 states because we kind of avoid the Northwest for some reason. So our schedule is a little light in comparison when it comes to travel. Still pretty expensive, very expensive actually, but it's not F1 expensive and it's not F1 difficult to do. So I believe that until the Formula One schedule clears up, or if there's like a weekend where, say we go to COTA, and it's like the USGP at the same time as the Echo Park Grand Prix in the Cup Series, only then could I see something like this happening, because currently F1 drivers such as Hamilton and Ricciardo, their schedules are just too packed. Because unlike a stock car racer that is really popular in like one state, Formula One drivers are relatively popular across the globe. Someone like a Lewis Hamilton especially. So they have commitments for sponsors, stuff like that, all across the globe in comparison to what our drivers have to go through over here. Even though, our sports they produce a tremendous amount of money, the drivers have a lot of commitments. It's not quite what an F1 driver has to do, at least when it comes to media and commitments and things like that would keep them from running a stock car start. So as much as I'd like to see someone like, say, Ricciardo do it, who's been talking about it for years, big Earnhardt fan, I don't see it happening until some schedule changes happen at the very least. And so, folks, that does it for episode number 12 of Post Tech. We hope that you have enjoyed it. The next time you'll be seeing us will be out at the Yard of Bricks, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the very much famed facility, site of the Indianapolis 500, and once again, the Brickyard 400, which we are anticipating this weekend. High downforce package, just like what we had at Pocono. So for the first time in the Cup Series, I would expect pack racing at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. For the Brickyard 400, it is the third leg of the Drive for 5 challenge. If you can win 3 out of the 5 races, you get a $1 million bonus. So currently, I believe that driver Kyle Larson has the best shot at pulling it off with the Brickyard 400 and the Southern 500 coming up, because he took the victory in the Coca-Cola 600. So he has a very legitimate shot at taking home $1 million. And also, Ryan Blaney won the Brickyard 400 last season, winning in Roger Penske's car at Rogers Track. So watch out for him when we roll into Indianapolis as well, because he's been having a kind of a difficult season so far. Might be a good opportunity for Ryan Blaney to get his season back on track. And so, folks, we'll be seeing you out at Indianapolis, Indiana, Speedway, Indiana, for all the action at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. We will see you then.